So the Rebbe over here is going to talk about a very interesting topic, which has to do with how the Yidden's possession of Eretz Yisroel was. And there was, first of all, when Yeshua entered Eretz Yisroel, it's called the Kibush Rishon, Knisa Rishon, and then there's when they came in the days of Ezra. And al pi halacha, there's actually differences concerning what took place in the times of Ezra, that actually was a stronger kibush. Because after Ezra's time, even after the Yidden left Eretz Yisroel, Eretz Yisroel still has the halachas of Maestras and so on and Trumas. But after Golus Bavel, even though it was after Yeshua's conquest, still in all, it was nisbatel from Torah's Maestras and so on. So there's a very interesting thing about how Eretz Yisroel was possessed by the Yidden, and it has to do, and it connects with the different types of expressions that we use in this week's Parsha when Hashem told Avraham Avinu that I'm going to give you Eretz Yisroel. He calls it a Yerusha, he calls it a Matana, and these different expressions has to do with these different periods in Jewish history about how they possessed Eretz Yisroel. And the Rebbe is going to get very deep into the details about this based on a certain Rambam that speaks about this interestingly. Okay, the Parshas Lech Lecham, Amura Mispar Pa'amim Haftachas HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Avram Losses Loyal Levanavis Eretz Yisroel Kimefurit L'Halon Betchilas HaParsha Nemar Vayeir Hashem L'Avram Vayomer L'Zaracha Etenes Aretz Hazois. So he told him, I'm going to give it, Eten L'Acher Mekain Belechtoi Mim Mitzrayim Kasher Loit Nifra Nemenu, when he returned with all the money that the Mitzrim sent him, and he said, it's too much for us to live together, we have so many possessions, let's separate. Amr HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ki es kol la'aretz asher ata roya, lecho etnena u'lezaracha ad olam. Kum hisalach ba'aretz, la'orka u'lerachba ki lecho etnena. So we see, again, the expression etnena, and there's an interesting thing that we're still going to speak about. What was he supposed to accomplish? Why did Hashem tell him, go throughout the land? Le'arka, le'rachba. How did that affect the ownership of Eretz Yisroel? Ubebris ben absarim, ki bayoim ahu karas Hashem savram bris leimer, lezaracha nasati es aretz hazois min har Mitzrayim ad har gadol nar pros, ubehem shechapsukim mefuratim kol ha'eser umas. In other words, in addition to the 7 nations that the Yidden conquered when they went in with Yeshua, the Knaani, the Chiti, Amori, Prizi, Vivusi, and so on, there was also 3 Umois, Keni, Knizi, V'Kadmoini, that we're only going to have when Mashiach comes. Hevdal HaKloli ben Haftachas HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shtei Haftachas HaReshonos, L'Zaracha, Eten Sa'aretz Hazois, L'Cho, Etnen B'Lashon Asid, Lo Yinamru B'Kesher L'Dibur L'Pula Shel Avraham. It was totally Hashem promising. Hashem told him, and here, and this is what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to give you the land. Then again, when he went out of Mitzrayim, I'm going to give you and your children the land. But by the Bris Ben Absarim, it was something different. Avraham Avinu asked. Avraham Avinu wanted to know. And over here, Nosati is Belashon Avar. And the Rebbe says in the footnote, and later on we're going to speak about it a little bit in the Sikha, that Yerushalmi says that means that I already gave it to you. It's not just in the future I will give it to you. Already from now, the land is given to you. After he did that, since Hashem told him, I'm going to give it to you as a Yerusha, Avraham Avinu asked Hashem, how do I know I'm going to inherit it? You told me I'm going to inherit it. You told me my children will inherit it. How do I know? So he said, by the bris ben absarim, by the promise that Hashem made between the parts. So then he promised Avraham, you should know this is already a happening thing. Hagoyin Rogachover, known as the Rogachover Goyin, the Rebbe a lot of times brings for when it comes to deep analysis of different topics. Masbir es hasiba lehevdei haloshen shebahaftocha shlishis amra kodesh baruch hu sabitoi lerishta, not nisina, not gift, or not only gift. V'gam Avraham shal b'loshen zu b'ma eida ki irashena v'ilu abitoi b'psukim hakoidnim ulazaracha etein l'cho etnenam she'elehem shnei drachim b'mesiris Eretz Yisroel lebnei Yisroel ayidei HaKadosh Baruch Hu begeder matana or begeder Yerusha. Two approaches, either a gift or an inheritance. V'zeh ha'hevdol b'ofen klali bein hakibush harishon lekibush hasheni. Kibush rishon is when Yeshua went into Eretz Yisroel and they conquered Eretz Yisroel. Kibush sheni is when Ezra went into Eretz Yisroel. We'll see later on the Sikh. It wasn't really a kibush. There wasn't really a war. That's what I'm asking. I know. It's just an expression that's used by Chazal. But you'll see later on in the Sikh that he says it wasn't in a way of kibush. That's going to be a very important part of that he's going to explain soon. HaKibush Harishon hu begeder matana. That the Rogatchover says in his type of style, it's a Geder Nekuda, Kol Eretz Yisroel, mixes like Lum, that it was like given, the whole thing is a gift. And a gift, it's like 1 point. In 1 point, you can't divide it into parts and saying, this part is not. It's all one entirety. This is really a side point. It doesn't really matter for the rest of the Sikha. V'kibush hasheni have a Geder Yerusha v'gam mixes. Okay, the parentheses is not that important for what the Rebbe is saying over here in the Sikh. By the way, he says that this is the expression of the Tzaftas Paneach that he calls it a kibusheni. So he says, Lefiza Musbar Hevdol Anal Bein Shtei Havtoches Lebein Havtocha Shlishis Bebris Bein Absorim Hakibush Shal HaKnisa Shniyam Shahoisa la'achar ha'matzav shal mepnei chateinu galinu ma'artzeinu after Golus Bavel, after the Yidden left Eretz Yisroel the first time. Ramuz b'havtocha shebekrisis habris l'zaracha nasati asher ba b'doyme l'knisa ha'shniya la'achar shailas Avraham b'ma'eda ki irashena. Why is that similar? What's the connection? So, halt kap, like they say in Yiddish. Kedivre Chazal, shezeh ha'yechet yachosis l'dargas Avraham. Avraham Avinu asking Hashem for a sign. B'ma eda ki irashena, that was already on his level. Hashem promised him. You could trust him. Why are you asking B'ma eda ki irashena? So kifi sheroim mekach shak b'kristus bris nemer lo el Golus yadot heida ki yer zaracha Golus Mitzrayim va'af nirmaz lo el Golus Bavel v'al Golus acheres. The Chazal say that the different things that took place at that time, there was the bird, and there was the vultures that he sent away, different things hinted at different Golus. Why were there the different Golus? Why was he told about the different Golus? This was because he did something inappropriate. On his level, he shouldn't have been questioning the Eibishter and saying, how do I know? So, just like the second time when Yidden went into Eretz Yisroel, it was after a time of them doing something wrong. The same thing Hashem telling Avraham Avinu, that you're going to inherit it, also came after Avraham doing something wrong, and that wrong also had to do with Golus. So it's the same type of idea. After Golus, you had the kibusheni. After Avraham said something that led to Golus, he was told Yerusha. So you see that the Yerusha promise had to do with kibusheni, had to do when the Yidden entered with Ezra. Umazois hakibush rishnai de Yeshua shahoyak nisa rishoyin l'Eretz Yisroel ramus b'shtei haftachas harishayim shal Kadosh Baruch Hu. Avraham didn't ask anything. Avraham didn't request anything. V'kach gam l'gaba inyan hasheni she'avtacha l'zaracha nosati ba la'achar she'Avraham misalach la'orka l'rachba, that we said only after Avraham Avinu went through the land to its length and to its width, then is when Hashem told him l'zaracha nosati, lashon ovar. What's the connection? Mefurish betargim Yonason shakavonihi avad bachas kasa. There's an idea that one of the ways of kinyan, of acquisition is you make a chazakah in the land. Chazakah means you show that you own the land. So it sometimes comes by building something on the land, or by giving over the key to the property, or by even making a fence around the land. In the case of Avraham, his walking the length and the breadth was showing a chazakah, balabatishkeit, that he's in possession of the land. Just the opposite, not like Bedouin. Bedouin do not own the land. They're just traveling. His travel was about showing that he is making this his. And this is a very important Rambam, because the Rebbe is going to analyze this Rambam a lot. So focus on this Rambam that he's about to explain. It was a public conquest. The Rambam over there, he says this halach actually twice. He says it both in Hilchos Beis Abchira, concerning the Kedusha of the place of the Beis HaMikdash, and also he says it in the halachas of Trumas and Maasros, when he talks about Eretz Yisroel being Kadosh, that you have to give Trumas and Maasros even after the Churban Beis HaMikdash. And the same thing, the Makim HaMikdash being Kadosh even after the destruction. So the Rambam makes a difference. He says, after the Churban of the first Beis HaMikdash, Eretz Yisroel did not retain its holiness. After the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash, it retained its holiness. You had to give Trumas and Maasros and so on. And in both of those sections of the Rambam, he says, what's the difference? Why after the first one did it not hold on to its holiness, and the second one it did? So he says, the first Kedusha is only because it's a Kibush Rabbim. Literally, you had the whole community, not an individual. The whole community conquered it. The Kibush Shenil Chaharetz Miyadeyam, Batal HaKibush, V'niftara Min HaToyra, Min Maises, U'Meshvias, Sharei Eina Me'eretz Yisrael. It's not considered the Jewish country anymore. Because we got it through conquest, so then when the Goyim came and conquered it from us, so we don't have it anymore. We don't have it anymore, so it doesn't have the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. V'kivin sha'Allah Ezra. V'kidsha, like kidsha b'kibush. He didn't come with an army. Ella b'chazakah sheyichziku ba. Similar to what we said about Avraham. He went la'arka l'rachba. He made a chazakah. They lived in it. Squatters' rights. They now lived in Eretz Yisrael. They made it there, not theirs, not through kibush, but through chazakah. Lefichach, kol makim shehachziku ba'olei Bavel, v'niskadesh b'kedushas Ezra hashniya u'mekudush hayoyim. Va'afal pi shenilka cha'aretz v'manu, v'chayev b'shvis v'maisros. And this is also Negei Halacha, because the Rambam says that the area of Eretz Yisrael was bigger by Bayis Rishon than by Bayis Sheni. And therefore, since Yidden settled in a smaller area than by Bayis Rishon, so only that area that they made a chazakah in, that they settled in the times of Ezra, had the Kedusha for Shvius and for Maasros and for Shemitah and everything, and that remained even after the Churban of the second Beis HaMikdash. But the area that they lived in during Bayis Rishon, since it was not settled that area was not settled in the time of Ezra, that did not retain its Kedusha. That's still considered like Chutz La'aretz, even up till this day. So now, and the Rebbe says, and this has to do with the two different types of promises. Hashem telling you there's a matana, and Hashem telling you it's a Yerusha. One has to do with Kibush Yeshua, one has to do with Kibush Ezra. And this is going to be the first question: is why? Why does one reflect the idea of matana and one is Yerusha? Achtzarich lahavin ma'wa kesher shal Kibush Harishon. Shekdusha nishava ayidei Kibush le'inyan shal matana. That what does that have to do with matana? Shal Kibush Hashem. Shekdusha yadei Chazakah le'inyan shal Yerusha. Okay. Before he can answer that, he's going to pose some very simple questions on the Rambam. One of the Mefarshim on the Rambam is called the Kesef Mishnah. The Kesef Mishnah is also, he also wrote eventually Shulchan Aruch. He's the same person, the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch, or Beis of Kari, that's the Kesef Mishnah. So he has a few questions on this Rambam. He doesn't understand. What's the difference between what happened with Yeshua and what happened with Ezra? Why is one the Kedusha leaves, and by the other, the Kedusha stays. Kedei lahavim zois, yesh lahaz betchilas divrei Rambam shehu v'leil, shalem shoyla kesef mishnah, shtei shaylas. Aleph, Eini yadua, or any yadea, maybe it's supposed to say, Ma koyach chazakah gadol mikoyach kibush, v'lo maloi namar b'chazakah gamkein, mishenilkecha ha'aretz miyadeinu batl chazakah. Why do you say, you know what, Yeshua's time, it was because it was conquered, so once Eretz Yisroel was taken away from us, so we lost. So we lost it, so it's not Eretz Yisroel. Not Eretz Yisroel, not Kaddish anymore. Why is Chazakah any different? They made Chazakah in the time of Ezra. They kicked us out of Eretz Yisroel. They took Eretz Yisroel away from us. So the Chazakah should also be undone. Why does the Kinyan through Kibush become undone through the Goyim taking it away more than it's Chazakah? In other words, what's the logic of the Rambam's distinction over here, this difference that the Rambam makes? Beis, Vesu, B'Reshoyna Sheniskacha B'Kibush V'Chilahaya Sham Chazakah. When they conquered Eretz Yisrael, they also settled it. If they settled it, they had a Chazakah in it. So therefore, they also had the mile of Chazakah. So even if you want to tell me, for whatever reason, when there's a different kibush, when the Goyim conquer it from the Yidden, it somehow undoes the kibush, but the Chazakah remains. They had a Chazakah by Bayis Rishon also. They had a Chazakah by Yeshua also. Are you going to tell me that in Ezra's time, where they only had Chazakah that's stronger than the times of Yeshua, Kibush Rishon, where you had not only Kibush, you had Chazakah, so that's going to be weaker? It's going to be less. That's the questions of the Kesef Mishnah. So the Rebbe is going to bring different Mefarshim that answer the question of the Kesef Mishnah. And he's going to show that it's very difficult to go by those answers. One of the commentaries on the Rambam in Hilchos Truma says, "V'nira l'daitoi lefisha loy kitshuha bepeh ela b'mei Ezra kitshuha bepeh." They didn't actually proclaim it. They didn't actually say by a proclamation, by an announcement that this is a Kaddish, this is Eretz Yisroel HaKadosh. But by Ezra, they said, it's a holy land, it's Eretz Yisroel HaKadosh, so therefore, that proclamation, that made it that now the Kedusha couldn't leave. Where do we see anywhere? It doesn't say anywhere. It doesn't say this in Nach, doesn't say this in Chazal, doesn't even say in the Rambam that the days of Ezra, somebody went ahead and proclaimed and said that this is Eretz Yisroel HaKadosh. In addition to that, Ein Gam B'Divrei Rambam Shum Remez Lahaz B'Zeh. The Rambam doesn't bring this as the explanation. The Rambam just says the difference is, B'mei Yeshua, it was Kibush. B'mei Ezra, it was Chazakah. If this is the answer, so the Rambam should have said something, and the Chazakah was because they said it b'peh. He doesn't say anything about that. Adraba haramba masbir mefurish shakedusha shniya loy batla loy mepnei shekitshua b'peh ki mepnei shaloy kitshua b'kibush ela b'chazakah sheichziku ba le'umat shakedusha rishayna shoysai de kibush. So that's one answer that the Rebbe says is difficult. Now he's going to bring another answer. Hatoises yamtim metaris eskushis hakesef mishnah the sviralei the kibush nachrim asa umevatel kibush Yisrael. One kibush can undo the other kibush. The reason why the Yidden got the Eretz Yisroel under Yeshua was because of kibush. Now that the Goyim conquered it back, so one kibush undoes the other. Masha'enkim b'chazakah she'echziku miyad melech poras she'nos lam rishoyin lahachzik b'am loy asa kibush mevato l'chazakah she'hoisa midas hanoisin. The chazakah is like a gift. The Chazakah is dependent over here not on what the Yidden did. If it's what I did, so then someone else can come and undo what I did. He's going to do the same thing that I did. I conquered the land, now he goes and conquers the land. But the Chazakah is coming because Melech Poras gave them the permission to settle in Eretz Yisroel. you can only take something away from me, but you can't undo that right that Melech Paras gave me. It's not like you conquered Paras and you told Melech Paras to undo that. That was given. That was a done deal. That's what the Tosis Yom Tov says. But the Rebbe says, top of the second column on 109, Achadayin lo turtzu shayla sakwetz mishnah. Legaba shayla reshoyna im kibush nachrim b'molchama. Hu kinyan hamavatul bailas kodemes shel Yisrael. Ma toisef sha'baila sakademes lo nikvai de kibush el yedei Chazakah medas hanoisim. Why not? Kiven shahaya kinyan shel kibush b'molchama yedei nachrim nisheres hashayla kelosh nakesef mishnah. Lama loy namer b'chazaka gamken mishenil k'arz miyadeinu batla chazaka. There's still the problem. So it's medas hanoisim. But still in all, someone else came and conquered it. Someone else came and conquered it, so they undid the chazakah. Kach nisheres adayim beina shayla shniya gam b'kibush Yeshua hoysa chazaka medas hanoisim kenemar. They didn't have to be conquered. They were scared. So they right away came and they told Yeshua, we came from afar and here you can have our cities. They offered it. So it wasn't a kibush. If you're telling me that if someone else gives it to me, so then it cannot be taken away, the Givonim gave it to us. Va'afal pikein eina Rambam mavchin ben makim lemakim, to say where the Givonim were, that remained Kaddish even after Golus Bavel. But everywhere else, that doesn't have Kedusha. V'oimer gabe kol Eretz Yisroel v'kibun shenilcha haaretz miyadeyam batal hakibush v'niftera min ha'toira min maisris u'meshvis. Ha'toisis Yom Tov Gimel mamshech v'oimer v'ein lahashiv. You can't ask a question that, you know what, the Tosis Yom just said, when something is given to me, so no one can take it away, technically. When I conquer it on my own, so then it can be taken away from me. What do you mean? Eretz Yisroel was given to us by the Eibishter. Is Hashem any less than Melech Paras? Melech Paras, he's saying, gave it to us. So we have the Das Neusen, so therefore it's impossible for the Goyim to take it away from us. But the Eibishter gave it to us the first time around. So the Tosis Yom Tov right away says, I know about this question. He says, Ve'ein lahashiv min sinas Hashem yizbarach shenasnal Yisrael b'rishoinam sheyesh lahashiv k'may Hashem yizbarach nasnal Yisrael ha'aretz kach nibun neviov sheyalu ha'machrivim v'yitlu mehem. V'chein nival koresh melch paras sheyachzira to the Yidden. Aval al kichas ha'uma azois miyadeinu after the churban bayis sheni loy matzinu ban nevuah befeirush or lafichach shaloi kedin natlu miyadeinu ve'in karkan gzelas. What took place was like this: Hashem gave it to us. Hashem took it. It said by His Nevi'im that Eretz Yisroel is going to be conquered by Melech Bavel. Then he said with a nevuah that Melech Paras will return it to us. But there was no nevuah and no direct communication from Hashem that after that, other goyim are going to come and take it away. So everything else beforehand was, even if you want to tell me there was Das Neusen, but there was also the Das Neusen to take it back. Hashem said it has an expiration date. But on the second base of Mikdash, when Hashem said that will be given to the Yidden, He never said that it's going to be taken back. It's still difficult. Im kibush b'molchama hu tzura shel kinyan mafkia shu kinyan gomer l'fi halacha. There's in halacha, there's in Gemara, it speaks about different types of kinyanim, different types of ways of acquiring things. There's kinyanim that have to do with movable objects with metaltlin. Then there's different types of kinyanim that has to do with non-movable objects, with real estate, with karka. One of the things that's discussed is conquering. If you conquer a country, is kibush considered a kinyan or not? So if you are going according to the view over here, that the goyim conquered it, and conquering is a kinyan gomer. It's a complete form of acquisition. So Mawa Hevdol im Namr Nevu al Kibush Zeh Eloi Harei Hoya Zeh Maisa Kinyan. It still has the din of being a Kinyan. Im HaKavana B'kachi Shenachri Eina Koinai De Kibush V'Mochamam V'Kivun Shal Kibush Nachrim Zeh Shal Achra Kibush Hasheni Loi Hoysa Nevuam Harei Shaloi Kedin Natluam V'Ein Klal Kesher Ben Dvarim Eilu Le'inin Kibush V'Mochamam. Because it has to do with, was there a nevuah, was there not a nevuah? It's not about the conquering. So again, it doesn't fit into the words of the Rambam, that the Rambam says that the Goyim came and conquered after we conquered. Since Hashem told them to do it this way, so now, even though normally kibush does not make a kinyan, but in that case, because Hashem told them that Kodesh is going to give them permission, and Kodesh did give them permission, so now they conquered it. Like I just mentioned before, the Rambam doesn't make this distinction. Harambam masbiris asiba lahevdel bakach shakdusha reshoin oisayde kibush vakdusha shniyayde chazakah. That's all what the Rambam says. He doesn't say this was from Hashem, this was not from Hashem, this was Malmaila, this was not Malmaila. Ulafia amar la'el ein adavar tali bekinyan shal Yisroel al ba'ofen hakibush shal umas. Begolus Bavel yachla kedusha lizbatel gam ilun nisafsa de chazakah. Even if it was a Chazakah, it doesn't make a difference, because Hashem said, but we're going to have to give it back. Hashem said it's going to go back to the Yidden. I'm sorry, because Hashem said that Nebuchadnezzar is going to conquer it. So what the Rambam says, that this, 1 second, do we have the right pages? We're missing a page? It's like this, sorry. So therefore, it doesn't, it's just one page is turned over by mistake. Actually, a lot of these pages are turned over. Yeah. Okay. So therefore, what the Tosfos Yom Tov says doesn't fit into the Rambam. So the Rebbe is going to still try to help out these mefarshim, and then he's going to say it doesn't work. In other words, the second question about what does it make a difference in the second Beis Hamikdash, you're saying they had Chazakah, but in the first Beis Hamikdash they had, along with Kibush, they had Chazakah also. So why would Chazakah without Kibush that they had in the second Beis Hamikdash be better than Kibush Chazakah in the first Beis Hamikdash? So he says like this: Amnam gam bekibush Yeshua ha'is Chazakah. They settled over there. Avol b'poyel loikonu ha'Yehudim es Eretz Yisroel ba'ofen shel Chazakah ki kavanasam ha'isol liknoisa dafkai de kibush v'lachein loikava chazkasam es ha'bailus ha'la'oretz kvi sheroim b'kal v'choymer min ha'alacha ha'oider b'nichsei ha'ger v'kesaver shein shaloi loikonu. There's a halacha. Let's say when the Gemara wants to give an example of someone that has no inheritors, Yershim according to halacha. So the example that the Gemara usually brings is a ger. The person was busy working in the field of a ger, but he thought he was working in his own field. And he heard that while he was working over there, this field really belongs to a ger, and the ger died. So he's saying, I made a chazakah in it. I was busy, fixing something up in the field. Says, it doesn't help. Because when you were working in the field, you weren't working on it to be kaina with a chazakah. So therefore, your chazakah that you were doing is not a chazakah that has the validity of a kinyan. So therefore, the same thing over here. When Yeshua conquered Eretz Yisroel, you're telling me they had chazakah in the land also. But they didn't intend to be kaina Eretz Yisroel through Chazakah. It was like that guy working in the ger's field, thinking it's his own field he's working on. They had in mind to be kaina Eretz Yisroel because of kibush. So therefore, since it was kibush, that was the only way they acquired it. That's the only way they acquired it. So then the kibush of the goyim undid the kibush that the Yidden did. But in the second base of Mikdash, under Ezra, over there they didn't have any kibush, there was no war, so the only way how they were planning to acquire it was through Chazakah. Chazakah cannot be undone through kibush. For whatever reason, it cannot be undone. So the Rebbe says, the comparison is not necessarily the same. What he said about, let's say, the ger, and the case over there in Bayis Rishon doesn't necessarily fit. Achrei shesarch levarer im svarer zu mas'im alinyaneinu. Shari binyaneinu kayam es hakavona liknes ha'aretz. Im ki be'ofen acher, v'lachein efshel liknes afilu leloi kavona u'b'myuchad shezau kinyan de'eraisa. By the case of the person working in the field of the ger, the Gemara says that he thought he was working his own field. The problem is not that he wasn't intending to acquire it. I'm sorry, he wasn't intending to make any type of kinyan whatsoever. He felt this was his own. But the Yidden in the times of Yehoshua, they were intending to keep it. So they did it this way, they did it that way. They were thinking about kibush, but they were doing Chazakah also. When they were being kovish, they were doing Chazakah also. So the Chazakah should help, even without them thinking, oh, I'm making a Chazakah to be kind. Even if they were thinking that I'm going to be kind just with a kibush. Doesn't make a difference. Since there was no kinyan in the way of kibush, okay, so the Rebbe knocked off all these other explanations. And the Rebbe is going to introduce us to two separate ideas in how the Yidden's connection is with Eretz Yisroel. One has to do more of a monetary connection, has to do with the halachas of Kinyan, and one has to do with the Kedusha of Eretz Yisroel. And these are two separate things, and therefore, the way one is affected is different than the way the other is affected, and the way Kedusha leaves after Bayis Rishon, for whatever reason that we're going to explain, the Kedusha did not leave after Bayis Sheni. Aleph, Kinyan Mammon, Kalaymar Habailus al Eretz Yisroel, Avril Be Yisroel. Beis, Ha'inyan Shel Kedushas Ha'aretz. Ha'inyan Arishan Bailus Yisroel al Eretz, Navam Mesiris Eretz Yisroel, Aidei Kadosh Baruch Hu Avraham Avinu. Vishalayim Dim Birushalmi Na'apasik, Lazarachan Nasati B'Lashon Avar, like we mentioned before, this Yerushalmi. That Yerushalmi says it was already given to them. She'ein zois haftacha b'avad. It's not like the other times when he said etein, etenena, but he says it in past. Ela kvar nosati, koloimar shema'oz af lifnei shekavshi Yisrael as ha'aretz v'poil, shayeches Eretz Yisrael la'am Yisrael l'tomid. Uvdazu, kevas af lahalacha. This actually has halachic ramifications for a very interesting halacha. Before we read this inside, I'll just explain the rule that he's about to explain outside. There is a halacha that it says when the din is that a firstborn, a bechor, is noito pishnayim. He takes double the amount of other children from his father's inheritance. The din of Noitel Pishnayim is only in property and items that actually exist. Something that's going to happen after the father passed away, certain improvements in the field, let's say by itself the price went up, or by itself, let's say, before the father passed away, let's say these trees didn't have fruits. Now the trees have fruits on them. So even though he would, let's say, take 2 trees for every one that the other brothers get, but in the fruits of the trees, he wouldn't take more than everybody else because the fruits were not there yet beforehand. This is called Ra'ui versus Muchzak. He only takes what is Muchzak, that he takes Pishnayim. What is only Ra'ui to come, that he doesn't take Pishnayim. So there's an interesting story with the Bnei Slavchad. That the Bnei Slavchad, they, the Gemara says, inherited because their father was a B'chayr. So they inherited Pishnayim from Eretz Yisroel. The Gemara asks, how? How could they inherit Pishnayim because their father was a B'chayr if they hadn't yet entered Eretz Yisroel? Their father passed away before they entered Eretz Yisroel. So it's not a Muchzik, it's only a Roi. How are they able to be Yorush? So let's see on top of the page. Kenemer begemara shebnoi slavchad yarshus achelik shel avim shel b'choir pishnayim afal pi she'ein ab'choir noitel pishnayim bera'ui ki b'muchzek. Why is that? Because Eretz Yisroel muchzek is he. It's considered because Avraham, you got to turn it over the other page. The Avraham Avinu, because he was told, L'zarachon nosati es ha'aretz hazois, past tense, it's considered that the Yidden already owned it. Since the Yidden already owned it, they weren't given double from something that was going to be acquired. This was already considered belonging to the Yidden. Avala inyan hasheni, that we said Kedushas Eretz Yisroel, ubemyuchad l'chiyav hamitzvahs like trumas and maisvahs and shvius and so on. Chal rak al b'nei Yisroel b'knisosam la'Eretz Yisroel. That's when the Kedusha came down. Before the Yidden actually entered Eretz Yisroel, whether it was the Kibush Rishon through Yeshua, whether the Kibush Sheni by Ezra, up until the entrance, there was no Kedusha yet in Eretz Yisroel. Bailus, yes. Ownership, yes. Monetary ownership, yes. Not Kedusha. Ba'oifin ha'knisa la'aretz vav, yesh hevdol b'shnei ha'knisas la'aretz. B'knisa rishonam ha'yaratzoin v'tzivui. The reason why I use the word ratzon is because of the famous first Rashi in Chumash that says when the nations of the world will come and say, Listamatim shekavashtam er zayna umas, he's going to say, B'ritzoinoi nasna lahem, B'ritzoinoi not lamahem, v'nasna lanu. So there was a ratzon from Hashem that we should have Eretz Yisroel. And there was a tzivui. The Eibishter commanded them, Chalutzim tavru, va'atem tavru chamushim l'fnei achechem kol geboyer ha'chayil, v'nich b'sha'aretz l'fneichem, kloimar sha'knisa tia ba'ofen shel kibush be'emtzoas milchama, v'lechein gam kedushas ha'aretz chala be'emtzoas kibush. Because that's what they were told to do. They were told to conquer it. So by telling them and fulfilling that thing that the Eibishter told them to conquer Eretz Yisroel, so that is how the Kedusha came down Eretz Yisroel. Lefize move on madu loy hoyel as kinin a Chazakah afilu legabe ore agavoinim shebahem ois a Chazakah midas hanoisin ki a Kedusha chala al pitzivu Hashem va Chazakah eina yechoyla ligraim lechalois ha Kedusha ki tzivu Hashem chayev leikonis la'aretz dafke be'emtzoas kibush milchama. That was the tzivu of the Eibishter. The Eibishter wanted a milchama, right? And only through a milchama, that's when the Kedusha came about. Then the Rebbe is going to add another thing. Yisrael came, top of 113. B'knisosam la'aretz namar v'nich b'shah ha'aretz lifneichem. Ha'aretz stam. V'lechein yesh loimer shemiyad im kibush Yerichai shahoisa nagra shel Eretz Yisroel. Nagra means the bolt. Like a sliding bolt on a door that you slide it open and then you can go through the whole house. And by the way, that has more to do a little bit with Chazakah, that removing the bolt or opening the bolt or changing the lock, these are things of Chazakah. So Yerichai, entering Yerichai was the Chazal saying like entering the entire Eretz Yisroel. It says that since all the 7 nations in Eretz Yisroel knew that if the Yidden would conquer Yerichai, then Eretz Yisroel would be open for them. So it says that even though Yerichai was not part of the 7 nations where they lived, but the 7 nations, each one had a representative It was like, Nebuchadnezzar wars, especially in 1948. Iraq sent troops to Eretz Yisroel. Well, Iraq doesn't even share a common border with Eretz Yisroel. Still and all, they sent troops to Eretz Yisroel. The same thing. In Yericho, they made sure to have troops and representatives from all the 7 nations, because that was the entrance, that was the way how the Yidden were going to get into Eretz Yisroel. So therefore, so by conquering Yericho, you already conquered the 7 nations of Yericho. You already had the entrance to Eretz Yisrael. So in truth, the mitzvah of kibush that brings about the Kedusha in the entire Eretz Yisrael happens immediately when they conquered Yericho. They didn't actually have to conquer all the other cities everywhere else. Kvar nishlama chaloy shel kedushas haaretz, all over Eretz Yisrael. B'emtzos knisses Yisrael Eretz Yisrael b'ofen shel kibush. But we do know that there's certain mitzvahs that the Yidden didn't start doing that have to do with Kedusha Eretz Yisrael until they actually settled the land. It took 14 years. They had to have 7 years of conquering and 7 years of dividing the land. There are mitzvahs, certain ones, even though the Kedusha was already chal, still in all, there had to be the conquering, actually, there had to be dividing. Ketnai l'chiyav mitzvah. There's a din that if all the inhabitants in Eretz Yisrael are not in Eretz Yisrael, there's no mitzvah of Yovel. So already, when under Sanicherib, 2.5 Shvatim, Ma'avi Yarden, were went into Golus, before the rest of the Aseret Shvatim went into Golus, so already Yovel stopped, because he didn't have the mitzvah of Kol Yeshvei Allah anymore. Yovel's only been Kol Yeshvei Allah. So you see, there are certain mitzvahs that have additional tnoim that you need to have. The same thing, there are certain mitzvahs that have to do with Eretz Yisrael that have to be after kibush, v'chiluk, and so on. Ach ein ze inyan ha'kosh l'kedusha ha'aretz. The kedusha of Eretz Yisrael happened, that Rebbe wants to say, even as soon as they entered Yericho, and they conquered Yericho, already the whole Eretz Yisrael was Kaddish. Shechala b'shleimusa miyad im kibush Yericho. And that, he says also, he brings a dogma from Mitzvahs Chala. Mitzvahs Chala was actually an exception. That when other types of mitzvahs, it says, only after the 14 years, Mitzvahs Chala, immediately as soon as they entered, they already had the Mitzvah of Chala. Lafi ze'esh lahasbir, ba'ofen noisav shachazaka lo'garma l'kdush sa'aretz, afilu ba'are ha'gevaynim b'chadayimim, ki kedushasa shekol Eretz Yisrael kvar chala miyadim kibush Yericho kidla'el. So if so, since it immediately happened right away, so it wasn't the fact that the Gevonim gave the land to the Yidden, and then the Yidden settled there, and that's how they acquired it. No. It was considered that the land of the Gevonim was already conquered because they conquered it right away when they conquered Yericho. Automatically, the cities of the Gevonim were conquered. On the other hand, Ezra Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Efkoid Eschem, I'll remember you, Lahashiv Eschem al Makom Hazeh. Ratzna Kadosh Baruch Hu, B'kidasei Lo Yahaya Lich B'Shes Eretz Yisrael. He didn't say anything about a war. He didn't say anything about Milchama. El Lalois Ulis Yashiv Ba, V'Lachein Chala Az HaKedusha B'Emtzos Chazakah Sheichziku Ba. That's the way how they acquired it. And that's the way how the Kedusha came down into Eretz Yisrael. Lefi zeh, meturetzes gam ha'shayla ha'rishona shel ha'kesef Mishnah. Kiven sha'kedusha yidei Yehoshua. Chala b'emtzos knisa, ba'ofen shnitztava lo yidei kibush, sha'kibush hu lekichas davar mimishu neged retzaynai. That's the idea of kibush. Conquering something means the guy doesn't want to give it to you, and you go to war, you take it from him by force. Yoitze shemitzad atzivui kayemes kan betchila baila shel ha'umes ala aretz va'kedusha chala kasher misgabrim ala umes bekibush v'lachein kiven shenilkecha ha'aretz miyadeyim but la kibush kasher misbatelas ha'izgabros ala umes misbatelas ha'kedusha shenava memenu. The kedusha is a result of the fact that I was able to overcome the nations. As soon as the nations were able to overcome me, so it overturns the Kedusha. Because the Kedusha was dependent upon the Kibush. Ilu beknisa shniya la'aretz kivin shal Ezra v'kitcha la'kitcha b'kibush shal b'chazaka sheyichziku ba kishem shem mashmos ha'chazaka kipshuta hi bailus maleus shal machzik shal davar shayach lo. It's not about doing something. You don't do chazakah against the will of the property owner. Chazakah is something that shows that I have complete ownership without any types of challenges to it. There's nobody going against my ownership. He's taking it by force. Gam lifnei kibush Yeshua v'lechein hi loy betela b'milei macheres ba'aliyas Ezra gorma habailus kinyan hamomen al ha'aretz es Kedusha ha'aretz v'lechein kishem she'uv de shel Eretz Yisroel muchzekesi eina betela la'olam v'gam la'achar ha'churban zoy artseinu v'ad maseinu kach ein betela gam ha'kedusha ha'shniya krucha b'chazaka. In other words, in the first case, Kedusha and Bailus were two separate things. In the second time around by Ezra, the Kedusha was a result of the Bailus that they expressed with Chazakah, and the Bailus went back all the way to the times even before Yeshua because of Avraham Avinu was already told, so the Rebbe goes on and now explains this Alpi, what's called, the Rebbe always calls it Pnimius Inyan. What were the Yidden like when they were in Eretz Yisroel the first time around? They were like on the level of tzaddikim. When they went into Golus, they had to do tshuva, and then they were allowed to go back in. Tzaddikim, it's like the Rebbe is going to say, forcing Kedusha on the world. Because it's not coming from the world. About tshuva, but he was in the world, and he's coming out of it to bring it to a state of Kedusha. In other words, the world itself is not being going conquered against his will. Hezber zemasim gam lehezber ala hevdel shmei kedusha l'shoyin l'kedusha shniya b'pnimis inyan shebezman ha'kedusha l'shoyin ha Yisrael b'darga sh'tzadikim u'bezman ha'kedusha shniya b'darga sh'bal tshuva. Echad ha'avdelim shmein shtei ha'darga su'um avoidus ha'tzadikim b'derech shalom mayla lamata hem goyrmim li'is'alis ha'tachtim b'emtzois ha'rodus kedusha b'koyach teres Hashem ha'rodus ha'lukus ma'mayla. They conquer it. They just put holiness into the world. After a while, it could stop. Once the goyim come and say, we're conquering it now. B'doim l'kach gam b'avodas ha'adam b'chlal, im avodas ha'yehudi nasas b'li'is askus b'olam, b'li'is nasas b'nisoyin shal tzadam anugud, lo yachalis b'tachan she'yuchalam b'nisoyin, yavidekach. Because he's totally removed from the world. He never dealt with the world. Come, let's see what you're going to be like when you're dealing with the world. Could be when you're dealing with the world, it's going to be a whole different story. Sorry, bir v'zich chatachten v'afichas l'kli l'kedusha v'lechen gila l'kus l'mata hu ba'ofen sheyesh l'kiyum l'loy hefsek v'kach gam b'chlolos avidasa l'kainoi kivin shu meskara v'l'akadosh baruch hu al terase v'mitzvoisav la'achar she'yishakua b'inyonei oilam v'afilu la'achar she'nichsha rachman l'slam b'inyonim ha'afuchim erot na'kadosh baruch hu. So how, when he comes to it, he's experienced the world. He knows what's going on. He's not going to be put off by what's going on in the world. Chayzrim b'nei Yisrael Eretz Yisrael, like el eretz shaleim lichbaish, which kibush shows asher eina sheyachas lahem, but rather they're coming back. This is my land. This is a chazakah that I have. This is a bailus that I have. This is ownership. El eretz sheyachas lahem betmidus. Lefi kol amar le'el yuvan hakesher sheben kedusha reshoina l'matana uben kedusha shniya l'Yerusha. There is a din he's going to bring down Gemara from a Gemara that says Yerusha ein la hefsik umatana yesh la hefsik. That means as follows. A person could say, he can make a condition. I'm giving Reuven a gift. Say I'm going to give him this parcel of land. I'm going to give him this house as a gift. After Reuven passes away, I want my gift to go to Shimon. And after Shimon passes away, I want it to go to Levi. I can do that. It's a gift yesh la hefsik. It can be stopped and says, this is only as long as he's alive. Or whatever. I could say, I'm giving him a gift for 30 days. And then the next 30 days, it'll be Shimon, owned by Shimon. When it comes to Yerusha, I can't say that first, let's say, this son will be Yerush. And then a different son will be Yerush. Or then another person will be Yerush. Yerusha ein la hefsek. Hatam lakach shematani yesh la hefsek. So he translates it, even though a gift is not something that you actually earn, you don't pay for a gift, but to a certain degree, you paid with something. I don't go to a stranger in the street and give him a gift. A gift is given to someone because you for some reason you impressed me, some reason you did something nice for me, so I decided to bring you a gift. So a gift is connected with the other person, but it's still not really about the other person. It's about me. I choose to give the gift or not. Eina matana nitanis kol kach beglal miles hamakabel ela beikir mitzad hanoisen ula makabel ein kesher shel shaychus l'matana, and therefore it's like the avoid of tzaddikim. Remember we said that tzaddik, since it's coming from above, it could stop. The matana also could stop. Because it's not really what the person that received the matana, he didn't really earn it. Kach gam nit na Eretz Yisroel Yehudim ba'ofen shel matana haba mitzad hanoisen, top of 116. Maila v'loy mitzad tvia v'kesher al makabel mata. And simply put, a person cannot go ahead and demand from another person to give him a matana. I have no rights to it. I have nothing on that person. It's my choice to give. It's on the Noisen's shoulders. Yerusha chalam neyasha Yerush hu kroivish alam Yerush v'yeshlei tvia v'keshel Yerusha. If someone else tries taking this land, the Yerush can go ahead and say, "What do you mean? You can't take it. I'm a Yerush. I have first dibs on this." Ad asher inyan haYerusha amiti u kashar Yerush hu etzem haMoirish v'oz ein kan shinu rishus klal. This is an interesting topic for itself. He doesn't go into it, but it says that the person that's inheriting is not, when you give a gift or you sell something, it means that's going over from this person's ownership to that person's ownership. But the Rogachover Goyen explains that by Yerusha, it doesn't mean that it's going over from the ownership of person A to the ownership of person B. It's really that person B is now in the same place like person A. There was no change of ownership. It's the person became like the first person. Lefichach, hanesinim al ma'ila ba'ofen shel Yerusha hoyse b'kedusha shniyam kasher knisses am Yisrael hoyse b'derech shel Chazakah hein kipshuta v'hein b'avodas ha'adam kach sheyesh lam shayches amitis l'Eretz Yisroel v'hem tamid ha'baylim shel ha'aretz. The Kedusha will never leave Eretz Yisroel. Yeshloima shezau haremes haremes b'psukim kasher b'kesher le'inyan ha'matana b'kedusha reshoyna ksuvim ha'betuyim lezaracha etein lecha atnena b'loshen asid. Because it's something that's not part of the thing itself. Why? Kedusha Rishoyna Kshura L'Shaycha Shel Eretz Yisroel L'Am Yisroel Shetiskayim Rak Ba'asid Kibush Eretz Yisroel Mershus Acheres Sheinana Kedusha, like we said before, that when it comes to holiness, that did not come in the times of Avraham Avinu. L'umma zoyis HaKedusha HaShniya Haisa ba'efin shel Chazakah shegilsas abayil Sham Yisrael al Oretz Mikoydim Lakein Ekev Anesina la'aviz. So the Rebbe is actually going to say an interesting thing. This also has to do with the halachas of Shemitah. That concerning a pruzbul, you need to have ownership in Eretz Yisroel, and every single yid can have the pruzbul made for him, because every single yid, no matter where he lives, is considered as if he owns Dal Damas in Eretz Yisroel, because of this bias of this ownership that was given already to Avraham Avinu. ההבדל בין מתנה לבין ירושה לגבי ארץ ישראל הוא רק באשר לקדושת הארץ שחלה בכניסת ישראל לארץ. שהקדושה הראשונה הייתה באופן של מתנה, ובקדושה השנייה נוסיף עניין הירושה שאין לה הפסק. But if you remember, we said that's only Kedusha, but ownership, bailus, monetary ownership, that started already in the times of Avraham Avinu. Have a bailus Yisrael ha'aretz. He tamid mushlemes behechlet mi'al shakadosh baruch hu nas ha'aretz la'Avraham Avinu bris ben absarim kinachlas olam. Or bekrisis bris lo yitachin shini v'hefsek. We always bring down that a bris is a covenant. It's a treaty. It's something that can't be broken. It's always there. U'lefichach ein adavar talib matzavim shel Yisrael. The Kedusha could be different, at least in the first time around. But bailus ownership, whatever he does, we still have ownership of Eretz Yisrael. Afil b'matzav shel bnei chateinu galinu martzeinu v'nisrachaknu ma'ad maseinu gam oz Eretz Yisrael hi artzeinu v'ad maseinu. Like we say in davening, we say v'pnei chateinu galinu me'artzeinu. It's still artzeinu even after galinu. כפי שאומרת הגמרא שירושה ילוחם אביסייכם אברהם אבינו למרות שהיה בינתיים חטא העגל וחטא המרגלים, still in all it's considered a ירושה. ובמיוחד לפי המוסבר לעיל על פסק דין הרמב"ם שעניין הירושה נקבע בתוך קדושת הארץ באופן שגם לקדושה השנייה אין לה הפסק קידשה לעשות לו, that we said that the bailus now expressed itself also in Kedusha. So after the second time around, not only is the monetary ownership there, but the holiness is there also. Like the Rebbe is always telling us, we do not have the right to give away parts of Eretz Yisrael, because it's owned by Klal Yisrael and the holiness is there since the Eibusha gave it to Avraham Avinu. Shari kol Eretz Yisrael l'gvulisam in Ar Mitzrayim ad Nahar HaGadol Nar Pros hi Yerusha la'am Yisrael l'chol Yehudi. Because I can't give away something that doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to the whole Klal Yisrael. I have no right to it. So in other words, they don't say, you know why Eretz Yisrael belongs to me? Because we got it in the 6-day war. Because we got it in the 48 war. If that's the reason why we are saying it, so then, yeah, there's room for negotiation and back and forth and who said and what, da. But if I know the reason I got it is because this is what the Eibusha already gave to Avraham Avinu, Elam neishazoi nachlas oilam shakadosh baruch hu alakei oilam lo'am oilam. If that's the attitude that we display without any shame. We don't have to wait for Mashiach to come, that the nations will recognize this and say that Yisrael belongs to us. As long as we have the courage to openly say that Yisrael belongs to us, because this is a nachlas olam that Hashem promised Avraham Avinu, if we have that courage, then automatically the nations are going to do what's right, even in the time of Golus. By doing what's right, the Mazaris is Bias Meshech Tzedkenu, She'os T'shtayich Yisrael, Kol Eretz Yisrael, Kol Keni Kniz V'Kadmoini, the other 3 lands, was Efech Alamis of a Brur, Likrei Kulam B'Shem Hashem, U'La'ov D'Shchem Echad B'Mheir V'Meinu Mamash.